So this ray gun that's currently being modelled by a good friend of mine was made for a steampunk event some months back. So in this video I thought it might be useful just to quickly go through how I put it together. It's comprised of a variety of components, so a lot of these are cast polyurethane resin. I've also got some clear resin in there, as you can see, and it's made out of a frame which is made of wood, which I've overlaid with plastic. And as you can see, I've also used some copper piping and some pressure vessels to put this together. And given that I've got some clear resin in there, I couldn't really avoid putting some LEDs in as well. So you may have seen this steampunk mask in previous videos on my channel, and part of putting this together involved making moulds of various components. Now it's sometimes the case when I'm making something that you find two pieces which just suddenly fit together, and that can direct a piece on a completely unexpected path. So that's very much what happened here. One of the pieces that I made for the mask was this eyepiece, and it just so happens that this piece here, which was something that I made for a previous mask, happens to fit precisely inside it, which was a bit of a happy accident. But having put them together, it really sort of looks like it could be something, maybe some sort of pressure vessel or some type of machinery. So that got me thinking, what could I actually make? Now I'd also been experimenting with clear resin, and it just so happened that one of the resin pieces that I'd made fit precisely in the other end of this piece, so it really started to look like something. So in order to sort of tie these things together, I also made this sort of an aperture here on the lathe and made a mould of that as well. So I started thinking that perhaps two of these end on end might be the perfect basis for a ray gun. So this is what I've come up with. As you can see, I've got a variety of resin pieces here which are screwed to a wooden frame, and I've used a piece of copper piping to create a barrel. So that's the basis of what I come up with, and I was quite pleased with how that looked. It's increasingly the case these days that when I'm making things, I often have moulds of various mechanical details and things like that just sort of sitting about from previous projects. So I've actually got quite a large box of bits and pieces which are often useful for adding mechanical detail. So with a basic shape sort of planned out, what I then decided to do was to take everything apart and to start covering the wooden frame in some thin layers of styrene plastic. It's a technique I often use because it's a nice easy way of adding a nice smooth finish to wooden shapes. Now given that I have a copper barrel, I thought it'd be quite nice to make a brass end piece for the gun. So I'm cutting out a shape here on the lathe. So what I've done is to cut a 10mm hole in the middle of the piece, and that's going to be just the right size to hold a LED in place. So there's the gun fully covered in styrene plastic, and I've also used some Kydex on the handle because it had a nice textured finish. So what I now need to do is start painting this up, and what I'm doing for the first time is using these pigments, which are Alclad, which is quite a well-known brand for adding metallic finishes. So I've not tried these before, but I thought it'd be worth having a go to add a metallic finish to some of these pieces. So here's a quick test I tried on a cast of a face. It's not looking too bad. You can probably see though that the eyes are much more shiny than the rest of the face. That's because the eyes were cast from some small marbles, so they've got quite a smooth finish to them. So I found that anything that was quite smooth, sort of geometric shapes, things like that, generally took the paint very, very well, and I got a very shiny metallic finish, which was cool. So for the clear element, I just created a mould of some 22mm pipe, and I used some epoxy clear resin here. Now as you can see, I've probably put a little bit too much pigment in here. I tried to swirl some blue oil paints around within the resin to give it a sort of a nice sort of swirly effect, and it sort of worked, but I've just gone a little bit too heavy with it. And the LED that I've embedded in the resin is just not going to be bright enough, I don't think. So that was a bit of a dud, so I went back and had another go. This time around I just put some cable inside the resin, and as you can see, much less blue pigment, and that actually looks quite nice, I think. So pressure casting was definitely required here, and here are some other examples I did at the same time, so you can sort of see the difference between a pressure cast version and a non-pressure cast version. This resin is an epoxy, and I think it's intended for doing floors or like tabletops, that sort of thing, so it will take a polish quite well. So what I found was that while you could wet sand it and get it to a fairly decent sheen, what really worked was to put some metal polish on it and then to use a polishing mop in a drill. And I found that that process got a really nice shine to it, so if you're going to have a go with this sort of thing, definitely worth trying. I found that it didn't work particularly well with polyester clear resin though, so a word of warning if you're going to try that, that method didn't seem to work too well. And as you can see, I've given the gun a nice red coat here. This was actually some spray paint I was saving for an Iron Man model, but I hadn't got around to using it, so I thought I'd give it a go on this. And I quite like the look of it actually. I think it sort of makes it look a little bit 1950s perhaps. Got that sort of retro sort of look perhaps, but I think that looks quite nice. So for the electronics, what I did was to cut some breadboard to size so it would fit within the resin pieces, and I've just soldered a variety of LEDs on there. Now I've sort of tried to give it a mix of colours and have some flashing LEDs in there as well, but actually the solid blue LEDs just seem to overpower everything, so while there are some flashing LEDs in there, you can't really see them shining through the resin. Nevertheless, I think the look looks quite nice. This is all powered from 3 AA batteries, and I figured I could just put those in the barrel of the gun so they're sort of hidden in there. So that's quite an effective way of hiding them, I think, so I couldn't really see where else I could put them. And there's the LED in the barrel, so that looks quite good. It's actually really, really bright, so that seems to do the trick. So there we go, just a quick video looking at that. So this project came together pretty quickly. So it's quite fun to work on. I hope this was useful if you're trying to make something like this yourself. But thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.